Awesome. So hi, everybody. My name is Alex Okeson. I am currently a PhD student at UW, advised by James Fogarty in computer science. This project is still underway, and it is in collaboration with James and also Sean Munson, who's also on the call today. And so this is actually follow-up work to Ravi's project that he was just talking about. So what I kind of want to do here is situated as that follow-up. So Ravi presented these 9 questions that we have, and we know that, okay, potentially Bayesian analysis can do a good job at closely matching these 9 questions that a lot of people have with their personal health data. And so what happens when we look at that in a broader ecosystem, and what can Bayesian networks Bayesian networks do for us in the broader ecosystem of people's experience with self-tracking? So the first thing I want to do is go over a little bit about Bayesian network learning. So it's slightly different than Bayesian, or it's an add-on to Bayesian analysis, and that's kind of what this work is based on and what I'm going to be discussing today. So we'll go over a quick overview of what is Bayesian network learning. So much like we're going to start with the same things as Bayesian analysis, and we're going to model everything as random variables. So from Morgan's talk, that should be familiar. So in this case, we're going to take a motivating example of, I want to understand why some nights I sleep bad and some nights I sleep good. So I'm going to try to model my sleep quality as a random variable, and that's kind of the variable of interest I'm looking at. And then I'm interested in potential causes. What might cause that? So caffeine, if I drink a cup of coffee right before I go to bed, that might affect my sleep quality. If I exercise one day, that also might affect quality. So I'm going to model those as random variables as well. And then this is where the network learning comes in. So what we're actually going to do in order to figure out what sleep quality is we're going to try to learn whether or not there is an arrow or a potential causal relationship between drinking caffeine and my sleep quality, or if there's a network or an arrow between exercise and sleep quality. And so we're going to collect data for each of these random variables, and then what we're going to try to learn is these arrows. The other thing we can do in this, which will also become key later in the talk, is we can also model the arrows that may be between caffeine and exercise. So if I collect data, those data might be correlated. So every time I exercise, I also might drink caffeine. And that obviously would not be very good when I go to try to model things, because we've got a lot of correlations in the data. So Bayesian network learning can also you can make it learn to see if there's correlations in your data that it should pay attention to. And then the way we learn these arrows is just in a Bayesian statistics sense. So I'm not going to go into the specific details of that, but it's basically very similar to what Morgan talked about. We're going to learn these in a Bayesian manner. So now that we have an overview of what Bayesian network learning is, we'll kind of go into the different opportunities for this Bayesian network learning in self-tracking and for personal health related contexts. So we're going to go over 3 big takeaways for pros for this approach. The first would be to support goal evolution and iteration. The second is going to be that you can learn more with less data. And the third is that we can provide alternatives to this strict self-experimentation framework that Ravi talked about. So the first point is the support for goal evolution and iteration. So Ravi presented the 9 questions, but what happens when people have one question and then they learn, they develop a new understanding of their condition, and then their goals evolve? So for example, so before I start the example, current tools generally only support answering one question. They lack the support for evolution, but we know from prior work that evolution is a big part of self-tracking. This is especially coming out of Jesse Schroeder's work. And the way Bayesian networks can help us here is that because Bayesian statistics and Bayesian network learning can answer all of those 9 questions, you actually have a lot more flexibility to answer multiple of those questions and be able to transition more seamlessly between them. So for example, in this example of when I'm trying to figure out what's affecting my sleep quality, I can ask, does caffeine affect sleep quality? And I can track data and try to understand that goal. And I decide that it does. In fact, when I drink a cup of coffee right before I go to bed, I sleep worse. But then my next, I know that, but then I next ask immediately after, well, by how much does that, does drinking like 3 cups of coffee affect my sleep quality? And in this model, we already know that this arrow exists. So now we're just asking a very related question in a Bayesian statistics sense. And that's just, if I've tracked how much caffeine I have and what my sleep quality was, we can model the 3 cups of coffee as now, instead of a, let's see if I can get this language right. Instead of that being an unknown random variable, now it's known. And so then we can look at what effect it has on sleep quality, which is or what the expected value is of that sleep quality random variable. And this can all come from the same data. If it's collected in this manner of collecting number of cups of caffeine and sleep quality. So which kind of is a nice segue into the next benefit of Bayesian network learning in this case, which is you can learn more with less data. So usually, as Ravi said as well, in this kind of context of self-tracking and personal health data, usually only a single person's data is available, and tracking large amounts of data is burdensome on people. It's really hard to track. So we want to make as much use of the data as we can. So Bayesian network learning can better utilize past and incomplete data. And this is because of the modeling based on the unknown random variable. So for example, now if I want to take my sleep example, and now I say, okay, I know caffeine affects my sleep quality, but does stress level affect sleep quality? Well, I have never tracked data based on my stress level before. But because I know that caffeine affects my sleep quality, now if I just add a new random variable, which is stress, now I can learn the relationship or a potential relationship between stress and sleep quality a lot faster, because I already know about the other potentially confounding factors that also might affect sleep quality. So I can learn that faster. I don't have to just start all anew. I can use past data to help me understand, and those priors that we've kind of learned, to learn faster about the new random variable. This also helps in the context where someone might have a partial lapse in tracking. So we also know from prior work that people sometimes stop tracking data because they get burned out of tracking. This Bayesian network learning, again, because we model things as observed and unobserved random variables, we can, if someone forgets to track something, we can just model it as an unobserved random variable, and we can still learn something from that existing data. So for example, in this case, maybe I have an automated sleep quality tracker. I've got one of those fancy sleep monitors, and my phone measures my exercise, but maybe I forget to say how much caffeine I had one day. I can still be learning about that the cause between exercise and sleep quality to figure out if that arrow exists or not, if exercise affects sleep quality, so that when I do come in with data with caffeine, now I have a better prior on exercise to know whether it's just caused by exercise or whether it might be caused by caffeine. So we can learn a lot more with this less data. We can learn from partial data, which comes up a lot in practice. And then the next thing I wanted to talk about was that this also provides us avenues or alternatives to this strict self-experimentation approach. So another thing that we look at when we talk about frequentist analysis and these types of current tools, we're generally looking at a complete elimination of prior contributing factors in order to control for these confounding factors. So in some examples of these in real life would be generally for irritable bowel syndrome, people are requested to do elimination diets. So they completely eliminate everything except for like mush from their diet, and then they slowly add in other things. And they kind of, it's like kind of an A/B analysis, right? The strict self-experimentation. And what you're doing there is you're controlling for the confounding factors. And then you can do before and after elimination visualizations or analyses on that. this has a couple of downsides in this A/B analysis, frequentist analysis, and those are that, these are extremely burdensome and not always feasible. Eating mush for that IBS example is not fun. Another motivating example would be A/B experiments for people with migraines. You might be actually forcing someone to have more migraines for this. And since migraines are pretty debilitating, people don't really want to cause themselves to have more migraines. Another thing if we go back to this sleep example, if I wanted to figure out if drinking more water affects my sleep quality, I can't just eliminate water from my diet. I have to keep drinking some amount of water. So it's completely infeasible in this case. And so Bayesian networks help here because we can be less strict about things because we can model these kind of random variables and model in different ways, and we can model changes. So Bayesian kind of statistics can learn from these naturally occurring or induced small variations. So I can adjust how much water I take in, and the Bayesian network can learn based on those small adjustments that occur in daily life. So you don't have to do this complete strict elimination, which provides a lot more flexibility to users and improves quality of life, as well as making potentially infeasible questions feasible. So kind of in conclusion, Bayesian network learning and this kind of Bayesian statistics shows opportunities to better support this personal informatics and self-tracking through more for goal evolution and iteration, can learn more with less data, and by providing an alternative to strict self-experimentation. So thank you. I can take questions.